Okay, excuse me. We're back, part 3 now. This is going to cover a lot more in-depth stuff. I'm going to show you how to add a time code and effects controls, effects I'm putting on, smear, polar coordinates, turbulent displace, roughen edges, and how to look up an effect. I also will cover making the circles roll, using circumference and distance, making wheels and spokes, touch on some gear ratios, things like that. That's just going to finish up with navigating the work areas within the shapes, anchor points again, moving the layer bars, and finally nulls, cameras, 3D layers, track mats, and finally rendering. So we'll get right into it, I suppose. Sit back, relax, and we'll see what we got. This is adding a time code. This is found over here. Just drag it on, and there it is. And then we can affect the different colors. It's set up as hours, minutes, seconds, and frames here. First thing I can do is just tweak the background colors a little bit. So we've got that. Change the color a little bit of the numbers as well. A little bit of playing around, trying to find the right color that stands out. Okay, and there we go. So there we have it. So that'll just track along with whatever you're doing. Sometimes that can be handy when you've got some time-sensitive effects you want to keep an eye on. As you can see down here at the bottom, I've got it running as well. So it is quite handy if you want to scroll through. If you're keeping track of, especially film, you can make that match up there. So I thought I'd touch on a few more of these effects. I like using the smear. That's got a start and a finish. You can affect the radius and the reach and all that. These, of course, can all be animated as well. I've done a couple of interesting shapes with that as well. I do encourage just to play around with a lot of different effects. There's so many to go with that you can't just cover them all. And this is polar coordinates. This does you go rectangle to polar, and you can just spin them around. So again, you can see there's some pretty weird things you can do with that. Polar to rectangle is another, and then it just changes it again. So we'll go up to distortion, and we'll look for turbulent displace. We drag that on. Well, there's several parameters you can change with those. The amount, the size, all those sort of things. So again, just play around with those. Evolution, complexity there. Yeah, and you can twirl down the type, and you see there's twist and bulge and a lot of different things. You have to keep an eye on when it shows through. Sometimes you see the transparency shows through, so try to avoid that unless you've got a layer underneath that you want to reveal. And you can go vertical or horizontal or cross displace. So a lot to play with there. Spherize is another one where you can basically make a sphere. It's like a magnifying glass there. You got radius and position and all that to control. What's the other one? Roughen edges, another one that I like using. That just, as the name says, it roughens the edges a bit. And again, you can change complexity and evolution and all that. And of course, keyframe all these as well. So that's that. And what else have I got here? Now, if you need to look something up, you just go to the top there in the search window. If you know what something is, you can type it in to bring it out of the selections. So this is CC Sphere. This actually takes the layer and turns it into a 3D looking sphere. It's not 3D, but it has that look. And of course, you can make it like a planet, and it's revolving in the XYZ axis. Scatterize is another one where I made a another layer in the background, and you can just give it a bit of a noise effect. And that scatterize can be, the planes can be twisted and everything as well, so some interesting stuff there too. So this one I was talking about before, I've got a shape, and I could edit the value, of course, and get a perfect sphere there. I've got the diameter of that sphere at 200 pixels, or a radius of 100 pixels. I calculate out the circumference to get a linear length, and works out to be, just from the formula there, 2 times pi times the radius. And so to go around the red circle there, it's 628.32 pixels. I work out the distance now, and the starting distance is at 100. The ending distance is at 1700. That's on the x value, so that gives us 1600. So we'll call the distance 1600, and we divide that by that 628, and that will give us a rotation of 2.55 rotations. At the end of it, in rotations, we can type in 2.55, and that will rotate exactly how you want it. And 255, that means it's tracking the surface that it's rolling on. So it just gives you a bit more of a realistic look. If I wanted to take the second one and put a negative minus 2.55 on it, then it'll roll along with the first one. And as you can see, that's looking a bit more realistic with sitting on top of it. I put those lines on there so you can get an idea of what it actually looks like. This is great for if you want to make clocks, but when you start looking at gears which have different sizes, then they will have what they call different gear ratios, which means that you got to work the rotation a little bit differently. So what they talk about is gear ratio. You've got this is the number of teeth that are in a gear. As you see, there's more teeth. They end up with the same sort of ratio, so 1, 3, 6. So this is 1 rotation. This will be 3 rotations, and this will be 6 rotations, so that they will all match up nicely. So yeah, with gears, it's about the right number of teeth, right ratio. See here, we got a rotation of 1, and this will be a rotation of 3 in the negative, and then this will be a rotation of 6. Just remember that these ratios are based on its diameter or the number of teeth in the case of a gear. And having this little bit of knowledge, I think it makes the animation look a bit more realistic. So basically, so you know, the main thing is that the rotations follow that particular gear ratio the same way, so that the 1, the 3, the 6. This one will rotate 6 times faster than the outer one. This will rotate 2 times faster than the outer one, and 3 times faster than the inner one. So with gears especially, it's all about the number of teeth. They have to follow the same ratio as the rotation does, but still makes for a bit of an interesting effect. School of Motion has an interesting video on gears, and he's really put a lot of effort into making dozens of gears that are all interlinked and working really well, but he uses his expressions for a lot of that as well, which I'm not going to go into. So here we go again, 12 teeth, 36 teeth, 72 teeth, the 1 to 3 to 6 ratio. So it's just a matter of plugging in the right rotation, -1, +3, -6. This just gives you an idea of how gears are if you really want to know the math, the radius, and all that. So there you go, and then this is what I did. So with this, you can get yourself some interesting animations, and so that's that. That's some light sweeps, and more light sweeps there, and they're all, as you can see, they're all appearing to be linked up with each other nicely. So it makes for a realistic rotation. Here is one with 9. There's your 9, and here's your -1. There's a -6, and this is a +3. This one here. So by following the diameter of the circles and the correct ratio of rotation, you get some pretty good animations there. This is another one I did where You can, by using a pen tool and moving the shapes around like I did with the letters, having it snap to the guides, you can get some interesting animation going on there too. So moving the anchor point up to the hip, you open up the properties, and then you got the rotation now. So you animate with keyframes, path, rotation, position, etc. And this is all native to After Effects. You don't have to use third-party plugins. This is something you do with only After Effects. As you see, I can manipulate those points, and these have got Bezier handles. You can make the curve, select path 1, and then it reveals the blue squares that you can select and then move accordingly. So, and these handles, these Bezier handles, can change the curve of the line as well. I got that set where I want. I just duplicate it, and then I can animate each one as I like. Every time you move, you can actually drag these to lock on to the guide, and the hip too. I can continue along the guide, locking to it each time you move them. So it just keeps it relatively focused around a point there. Simple little running legs. After you get your keyframes in position, you can select them and change them a little bit if you need to, or you can use the graph, give yourself a bit more fluidity. You can toggle hold, easy use Bezier for variety. Right click to manipulate the keyframe. Right now I've got these, they're all just linear, but if I select them all and go to the keyframe interpolation, it's linear now, but I can change that to anything I want. Get used to all the types of keyframes. These are hybrids, auto Bezier there, linear, hold, and these are ease in, ease out, easy ease there. So then these are hybrids, so they're hold on one side and ease in there. So it's good to familiarize yourself with the keyframes as well. Experiment around with what different things do. Now this has got a little bit more of a bouncing motion, and then you can see the path there. That's because the toggle path is on. I'm going to just now look at navigating the area so that we get an idea what the numbers are. It's a 1920 by 1080 comp. Center point is 965.40. Up here is 0, 0. Over here is 1920, 0. 1920, 1080. And down here is 0, 1080. You have to have a little bit of idea of XY coordinates. Again, with navigation, it's just good to know how to read the layers, what's in there. So just bearing in mind the center point is 965.40. As I said before, 0, 0 up there, 0 to 1080 down there. This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. 0 to 1920, and up here 0 to 1080. And with the anchor points, it's different again. So I can't stress enough how important it is to know your anchor points. The main thing to know, though, is how the shape anchor point positions 0, 0 at the center, and the layer anchor point positions 0, 0 at the top left corner. So again, the shape is at 0, 0, and position is 0, 0. But as you move the anchor point, notice everything goes nuts. This is going up towards the minus, again, like I was saying before. Up here is minus 960, minus 540. So it's 0, 0. It's working much like a normal graph would be. Here we go again. So we're bringing it the other way, and they're both plus. Now this is plus and minus. And over here, minus plus. Yeah, I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. So in these quadrants, you got minus, 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 plus, 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 minus. So here I am just zeroing it all out again. Sometimes you get into a situation where something isn't working the way you think it should be, and it could just be the anchor points are wrong. Just bear in mind that the main thing to take away is the layer has a different coordinate system than the shape within it. I was really struggling to find any information as to why that is, but it does seem to make sense the way the anchor rotate around 0, 0 point. So this is basically shape anchor point versus layer anchor point. you can do some good stuff animating both, so that you get a lot of movement. Scaling too works off that, so it's skewing, all that sort of thing. Some effects work off those anchor points, so it's really good to have a good grasp of the anchor point. You notice down here too, like you can zoom out the timeline, so you have frame by frame by frame. So if you really want to accurately put those keyframes, just zoom, get your playhead around the keyframe, and then just zoom it out so that you can move it frame by frame for real accuracy. Know that that's there, so it's just a bit of a zoom at the bottom of the timeline there. All right, so now we're going to look at the actual layers themselves and manipulating them, cutting and snapping and positioning. This is, I think, another aspect of working in After Effects that really it helps knowing. Remember first that the playhead, everything happens at the playhead. If you select all these and move the playhead where you want it, then you option bracket, you can cut all that off just like that. It's best to do this sort of stuff when it's still a shape layer. Once you start doing pre-comps, then that could get a bit messy. So it's best to get all your layers, your original shapes sorted. So here you can shorten it just by dragging the layer. If you hit shift 2, it'll snap to the playhead. So it's good to be able to move these layers. So this is basically when the content appears in the comp. Shift drag the playhead to the layer, or shift drag layer to the playhead, and that will snap. See how it snaps to the end. So if you want all of these to match up the length of that and make the cut at the same time, then you can do that. So just remember that shift drag, either the playhead to the layer or vice versa. So now you got the playhead in a good position where you can do other changes to the rest of the layers. Free floats around, but when you hit shift, it'll snap. So this is just handy to know, because sometimes you will be offsetting some actions, and you want to be able to position the content here in an exact position. That can be done. What I often do sometimes is just with the arrow key, the playhead will move forward 1 with command arrow, and shift command arrow will send it forward, I think 10. So you can separate the playhead each time by set a number, and then snap to the playhead, so you can get an even progression up the steps there as well. So on my laptop, I don't have a numerical keypad. So to move a layer forward and backward 1 frame, it's page up or page down. That's on the numerical keypad, which most laptops don't have. So alternatively, what you need to do is option function up arrow or option function down arrow, and that will move this content 1 frame forward or backward. And if you want to do 10 frames, it's shift page up, page down, or shift option function up, function down arrows. So sometimes it's easier to move the playhead to where you want it and snap it to it, but sometimes it's good to, but just know it's there. If you really do need exact movements for particular things, then if you want text to come in exactly at a certain time, then it's good to be able to manipulate the layer content, those bars. Anyway, we'll leave that alone for now, and I thought we just cover a little bit on 3D camera and null layers. I just started by right click for edit value, make a specific shape. Here you can do it by pixels, and you can have them. So you duplicate, command D for position. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you got four shapes here, and it's all in 2D, positioned accordingly. If we start by, I've got guides up there too, so to help the positioning of it. So that snaps there to the center, and this snaps to the center. This one, it'll snap to the edge as well. And I'm just going to put some more there, some more guides, draw some guides along there. Edit the value, and view snap to guides. So that your snapping is on, so you can reposition the anchor points. Show you why in a sec, because we're going to be rotating these panels. So I put the anchor point there. Here now we want to turn this into a 3D layer by clicking this little cube. There you go. And then when you open these up, you're going to have X, Y, Z positions and X, Y, Z rotation. That's why you want your anchor point, set them in 2D first, because it's a little easier than. So as you see, you have your X going that way for position. Z is front to back, and Y is up and down. Here we can manipulate the positions so that they are on the right line. And as you see, the negative Z value brings it forward, and the positive takes it back into space a bit. Now we got rotation here. So the X rotation here rotates it around the X axis, and Y rotation rotates it around the Y axis. And this is based on where the anchor point is. And use the Z rotation front and back. Get really comfortable with how these controls work. It might take some trial and error at first, but once you get your rotations right, then you can make some, make rooms or interiors of boxes or a number of things like that. So as you see, I'm positioning the Y, so that's going up. And then you can animate those positions in time. Move that back a little bit. I'm just changing the value here. Each one of these components can be moved in the Z axis, that's front to back. It's minus when it comes towards you, and it's plus when it goes back into space. Now we've got a opening here, and there it is. So, and it's moving back away from us. So it's giving us that dolly motion. In a minute I'll show you with the camera. We'll do a camera layer there that you go up to. So with the camera, firstly I like to work in pixels because everything else is working in pixels. They have it in millimeters, I think, or inches, whatever, but I just work in pixels because everything is in pixels. I understand from what I've read that 2-node cameras are easier to learn on. 2-node cameras have got the camera plus the point of interest. So you can use one of the presets. I use 50mm. That's just the standard eye. All these things I don't worry too much about in the setting. I just like to set the pixels, set the 2-node, and set the preset to affect. The rest of the stuff is and maybe enable depth of field. So you just have to. This is a good guide for example, in the controls of camera, you'll have zoom, focus distance, focal length, angle of view, things like that, which are changeable. So just bear in mind, here's your comp size in pixels, and as you zoom closer, you have the zoom here, the focus distance. It's all based on the imaginary sensor here. So so just this is for the terminology that you'll be using. So we basically I just like to set it up like that, and then do the controls within the layer itself. So, and here I like to, because you're in 3D now, you have the option of the number of views. I've got this set at 2 views. One is custom view here, and this is on the left. So it's seeing the scene from the left. So I set the magnification ratio a bit lower so that I can see everything. And so this is just a good way to work so that you can keep an eye on where the camera actually is and where your subject is. So and down here you can adjust your, as you adjust your numbers here, you'll notice that the focus distance changes, and so all these things, focus distance basically is the one that does the most because it's always keeping it in focus. You animate the X, Y, and the other thing is point of interest. You want to make sure that's somewhere. If you set the point of interest to the plane that you're filming, then it will hold on to that. So then you just work. Then the camera can be adjusted X, Y, and Z position. So side to side, up to down, or in and out. So that will move your camera like it was on a dolly or on a crane. And but just remember that you want to keep an eye on these controls. So here we got another look at it here. So you can actually drag the camera and see how it's coming right in. Now the focus distance will be changing if you don't change the focus distance. You can drag the point of interest to that plane as well, and it will stay there. So and you can see here this is creating a path that it will follow if you animate, that is, and there can be points put on that to make it S around, and it can rotate and all that sort of thing. So it's really working like a normal camera. The rotation is your pan and tilt, where you barrel roll it, and the position is where it is compared to its subject. So if you're at all in photography, you can probably see the similarities to this. So we got this. Basically, the shape is animating, and then the camera is going to go on in through. You can tune the focus distance, and that's how you're going to focus. If you're a little bit blurry, then you might want to just check that focus distance a little bit. That could be animated as well if you need to keep the focus on a particular part of the subject. So yeah, and now I'm just adjusting the Z position and the X, mainly the Z position because I'm just zooming in. So you notice that the numbers they're going to the plus when I'm going in. So here we go. And I've got this other one that's down the back a little bit. So it just gives you a basic idea how to move a camera within a scene. There's a lot to it that you can practice with, but the basics are pretty simple. And just remember, each view has its own magnification ratio. The name of the view is up here. Active camera. You go down to this drop down to get the choice of views. Here's your drop downs. So first remember to toggle on the 3D, and then that activates Classic 3D or Cinema 4D. If you choose that, you can go into render options as well, but just for the most part leave it at Classic 3D. And then next to that is active camera, and then you can pick that, the default, or you can choose, and this is for whichever window. If you have the 1 or 2 windows or 4 windows even, you make sure that's selected, and then you can choose which view. I like custom view because it gives you that side on. It's sort of like the active camera, so it gives you that side on. So here, you can choose 1 view, 2 views, or 4 views like that. So that's just down here along this bar here. So there's 1 view. So, and another thing, just remember that these layers can have effects on them, and then they could be turned into the 3D space so they look like walls or whatever. And I think of 2001: A Space Odyssey, when he's going through the wormhole and he's got those things on the walls. So So you can imagine what sort of things you can get up to. So here I've masked off and made this is in 3D as well, but I've masked off a different shape, and I could turn it on the y-axis. Just remember, it twirls around wherever the anchor point is. It will twirl around. Y-axis is always up and down, so it's going to turn around that way. X is the other way. Z is in and out. So I've duplicated that. So I've got a couple different walls. So and I always make sure I name things. Right wall, left wall. You can add effects to the walls. Change the colors, everything. Now, you can add null layer. I'm not going to go into expression controls, but the null layer is just a catch-all so you can actually what they call pick whip the parameters to the null. So I'm just going to touch on this a little bit because it just makes it so if you have a bunch of different layers and you want them all to follow through, you go up to new and null, and that just creates another layer. And here it is here with the anchor point, everything it's got on it. You can use the expression controls. You drag those on there, sliders or lever controls or dials or whatever. I'll put a slider on there. So now I can take and this pick whip. I got the X position, and I can basically once I can just drag that pick whip up to the null, and you let that control. And when you do that, it automatically locks out the values here because the values will now be on the null. So so this is a bit more advanced than I wanted to cover in this series, but I thought I'd just finish off with, so there we go. We're dragging the position controller to the slider. So this case, many layers, the right wall and the left wall, could have the same things dragged to the same slider, so that this slider controls both walls, and you can get a certain percentage. But so this is just controlling a simple X position there. And expressions are another thing you can look up. This is an expression here. I'll pause that for a sec. So when you option click one of these parameters like position or whatever, or you pick whip that up to there, it creates an expression for you. And if you really want a challenge, then it's worth looking into. But just know that when you pick whip one of these up to the null, it will turn the value red, and it will create this expression for you, which you can edit. There's all sorts of different expressions that can be put into this position to make different things happen. So, but yeah, just know that there is that expression available. For the most part, you can just do that pick whip, and then you can animate this slider to do what you want it to do as well. I covered this a little bit in last section, but I thought I just might go over it a little bit more detail. So you got these buttons down here. Just remember that you can make your new bins, your new files, and store assets in there. You have the new comp there. When you want to make multiple comps, for example, you just keep hitting the comp, and now we've got two comps. One is 1920 by 1080 and one is 960 by 540. So we've got two different size comps going for whatever reasons we want to do. So, and just know this here, this is bits per channel, the bit depth. I think most part 16, but sometimes when I said before about saving if you drag a 32-bit effect over onto a 16-bit channel, you may have a crash on it. So it's happened to me a few times. So that's why I always save it first. So so you got this this filing system over here, and you got the comps listed out here. We got 3 different types of comps there, different sizes. So just remember to know how to read those sizes. Just get backing up a little bit. This file button will make this file, which you can name whatever you want. And these can be stored in, assets can be stored into the file. So you can keep this area nice and clean. You can have one for pre-comps if you want. If you start getting a very busy animation going, this is going to start filling up. So you might want to bin a lot of the stuff into their own categories. But just know that the comp, there's the symbol there. This is the size. So just be mindful that multiple comps can have different sizes, and this being the biggest one. So yeah, 4 of these will fit into that, and 4 of these will fit into that. So just bear in mind that the different size comps will look differently in the windows. I'm lowering the magnification ratio of each of these big ones so that they can see. The aspect ratio is always going to be the same, 1.78, because of the dimensions. If you want, you can drag these comps to new layers and things like that. So this is just a little bit of a demonstration of the comp sizes. You have a 7680, which is a big one, and there's a 1920. It fits inside that small. So very rarely would you ever use a 7680 by 4320. That's just so much memory and so much processing to you wouldn't do it unless certain the resolution would have one thing, because then you could downsize it, but generally you wouldn't use those for most cases. So I'm just going to touch lastly on track mats. I just thought, I'll just pause that for a second just so I can read it. Track mats can be very confusing. There's a lot of information out there, and it's here or there. But so I've researched several sources to get this information, so I think it's pretty accurate. But the top, when you're talking about track mats first of all are either alpha or luminant information, and you can also have alpha inverted and luma inverted. So those are your types of track mats. If you have it at the top layer and you use another layer as an alpha mat, then that takes over control of the information. And I'll show that to you in a sec here. So just know that one layer acts as the fill, and the other layer will act as the information for everything that's either opaque or transparent, whether it's color or just brightness and darkness. So that's what you got. Alpha is your color, luminance is bright or dark, and then you either have transparent or opaque. So those are the things you remember when it comes to track mats. So because really when we break the image down on the computer, it's just based on what colors are transparent, what colors are opaque, and the same with the brightness. And that's going to come up in a sec. I've got a couple of charts that put the information out there. All right. So alpha mat, luma mat, inverted. You got, if you're looking at the alpha mat, which you've often seen as white and black in like Photoshop, it's just determining, you have an image and you're just looking at the alpha mat, then you're seeing the shape in white and the background in black. It's just saying that whatever's in white, the pixel value is 100%, which is opaque, and whatever's in black is 0% or transparent. And in the luma mat, you have luminance, the brightness value, same thing. If the luminance information of the pixel value. If it's 100%, it's opaque, and if the luminance information of the pixel is 0%, it's transparent. And then inverted is just doing it the backwards way of doing it. So as we look at our layers here, we have Adobe After Effects and a red background, and here as well. And I've just shown you by ticking these different boxes over here. Under, first of all, you got your track matte here. You're assigning the track matte from red background here. You just barely read it. So you drop this down and you choose red background, and then this becomes either a alpha matte or a luma matte or inverted. There's your luma matte, and there's your inverted. There's your alpha matte. That's inverted there. So you choose your red background as a track matte. It turns it into a alpha matte, and or you can tick it to make it inverted, to make it reverse. And here is the luma, and there's its inversion. So again, these are both taking a track matte from the red background. And then you'll notice that once you use this red background as a track matte, it's no longer visible on this layer. All this information is get carried on to that layer. So it's only visible through this layer because you've drawn it away. And same here. So you won't see this anymore. So hopefully this sheds a bit of light logically. And this is just giving you a few ideas. I've taken the track matte from the red background. It's made it not visible anymore. It's just going to show through. This is luma. It's just showing the light in the dark. So it's making it transparent or opaque. That's it with the alpha matte. Again, the red background disappears. All the information is going onto the text. There's the luma matte inverted there when you click it. Coming up is a different way of looking at it. So we got 3 different shapes, and there's no track matte on it at the moment. So track mattes apply alpha and luma info to the receiving layer with the red, green, and blue. So on this blue layer, I'm going to use the track matte from the red. And all of a sudden, things change. What we have is an alpha matte with the red information on the blue, and see how much of it goes away, because all you're getting is the difference. Some weird stuff goes on with these things. And if we invert it, we get the other way around. I just thought I'd do this demonstration just to show you what exactly happens. So we put it back to there. We make sure this is visible again, because every time we do that, it turns that off. So let's take it red from the blue. This layer receives track matte info from the blue. Inverted. And if you shift these things around, it doesn't make a difference which is on top, which is on bottom. So all we're getting is a cutaway of the 2 shapes, and the red is receiving the actual color information. It's still red, but the pixels that it's receiving are 100%, so they're going to be opaque, if that makes any sense. So it's just getting what the overlap is. So what the track mattes are really saying is they're passing on pixel information. Is the pixel 100% or 0%? And then that percentages affects what's on the layer that it's applying to. I know it's complicated, and I'm trying to present it a different way than what I've been seeing it described as on other tutorials, because I still, maybe it's just the way I think, but it's sometimes hard to get your mind around what it is. But it's just it's important just to remember that it's pixel information. Well, I decided to make this little screen up. As you see up there, there is the red, green, and blue color meter. And we also, down here in the info, I set it to hue, saturation, brightness, and alpha. Just to sort of look at the pixel in a little bit different light. The the track mats are they're about the pixel information, and that information pertains to these values. And every pixel has their own value of red, green, and blue to make up the color, the 8-bit color, and also has a value of grayscale, which is totally white, bright, or totally black, dark. And then your values pertain to that. As you see, the, the value here, 100%, is in the white realm, and as you scroll across to the black, these will drop to 0 in the brightness. Saturation will probably remain the same. The hue pertains to the number of degrees on the color wheel, so that as you spin around the color wheel, you're going to end up with going from red right around to blues and greens. So as you go around the color wheel, 360 degrees will pertain to color information. And then if you look at the different areas of the screen, some are transparent, like where I put this mask. This area here is transparent because it's the background of the layer itself. And this line I drew on it, and it's got a value of 50% transparency, so you have that as well. So so as you look at the values, as this cursor, the pen cursor, is scrolling across, it's showing the different values of both on the HSB scale and the RGB scale. So it's really good, I think, if you play around with the different color picker, the digital color meter that Mac provides, as well as the info color meters that are in After Effects. And this will give you an idea of how the alpha information and the luma information are basically worked out and used as track mats. So I hope this little section helped out a little bit for you in clearing up some the issues. This is the final export. So as you see, RAM preview and stuff, the green bars here, the frames are stored in RAM. Blue bars, the frames are stored in defined cache, which is the media cache that I chose. If it's very full, you need to go and clean it up and empty it. So this is just giving an indication. So far, my computer is doing most of the work there. So with this sort of stuff, but the extra disk cache actually takes over a little bit here and there when it's starting to get very full. So, and I covered this before about choosing in your preferences what caches you want to use. So I've chosen conformed there, and so you can have extra SSDs for that. So now we're going to go to the render queue. I had that video all loaded up, and I was happy with it. So I'm going to go to render, and so as you see here, you can do a few things to the render queue, close it out and all that if you want. But if you go up here to File and Export, and then you can go to Media Encoder, or you can go to Render Queue. I generally use the Render Queue. Media Encoder means you can send that off and it will do the work while you want to work on something else. But I like to keep an eye on with After Effects comps. It's quite important to keep an eye on stuff to make sure it's working. Now, these are your quality settings. I generally set it to high quality. I've tried a couple of times thinking it would be clever because I had some After Effects comps with an alpha, the transparent background I wanted to maintain. But once I put that on the computer, I can't play it. So I just, if I want to use it as a MP4 file, it doesn't like to play. So I'm not going to go into these different ones, but I just know that generally I just think that most people just use high quality to render out. That's in your render settings. So, but there's these other choices as well. And if you want to render that to Photoshop, for example, or TIFF, whatever. But here they are here. Render settings, best. Again, there's a bunch of choices, but I think best, high quality. And then this is where the log will errors only is usually what it's set to. And then the last one you output, you specify where you want it to go. Desktop, particular file, whatever. Sometimes I put my stuff into a separate SSD for storage. But if I want to work on it further, I just send it to the desktop. I give it a good name, and you can make a new folder inside desktop if you want. I don't do that, but see, now it's going to AE. So there it is, desktop. But so anyway, we render now. If we're doing multiples, we want to just put Q in Media Coder. So basically, this is it. You've got it all in here. You got the output setting right, so you just hit render, and then you'll see the current render status here, 9%, 10%. And right here where it's going. Output to AE comp MOV. That's a QuickTime movie file. So all this is being rendered as we need it. And these are a bunch of effects that I did for another project, which I've got set to music. So, and you can see it's 57%, and the number of frames are there. And as you can see, my system's working pretty well. You're actually, it's rendering it out. It's not glitchy or anything like that. So I'm quite happy with the way I've got it set up. So that's the render, and now you can render it multiple times, different destinations, qualities, outputs if needed. So if you want to have different types of renders for different destinations, you can do that as well. So you've got the main comp here that can be rendered in yeah, let's look out for my upcoming tutorial on Premiere Pro. I haven't even started that, but I'm just wanting to finish this After Effects thing, so that'll be my next thing. So thanks very much. This part 3 finished. I hope that everything got was explained properly, and you got a lot of information out of this. I wanted to approach this a little differently than what I normally see, so it's pretty casual and, like I said, unscripted. So I appreciate your patience for watching, and I'll look forward to making the next one. So this is just a hobby of mine, so I'm not trying to sell anything or anything. I just like doing this sort of stuff. And back in COVID, I had a lot of lockdown over here in Australia, and so fortunately the computer network was still working, so we were able to at least learn something while you're stuck in the house, avoiding the plague. So that was another era. So thanks very much anyway, and enjoy your day, and just keep on creating. Thanks very much.